Humanitarian assistance can be very classic. It can be bags of food, quick boreholes, shelter. Organisations like the International Rescue Committee and others allow us to think and look forward. What are the current challenges? It's very important to shape your assistance to the real needs. The European Commission's Humanitarian Aid and Civil Protection Department, ECHO, is a humanitarian donor and provides short-term, life-saving assistance to people outside of Europe who've been affected either by natural disaster or by conflict or man-made disasters. In 2011 alone, we put in over €1 billion in 80 countries, helping 150 million people across the globe. We do not implement projects ourselves. We have 140 people in the field who monitor the assistance and ensure it's going to the right people. So whatever the needs are is what the non-governmental organisations on the ground provide, and that's what ECHO funds.
At the moment we're here in Jordan working for Syrian refugees. The latest figures are about 400,000 people that have either registered or waiting registration as refugees. IRC is one of the organizations that we are funding in the region, not only in Jordan, to support refugees in the provision of legal aid and psychosocial support and medical services for refugees that have been exposed to violence, to gender-based often violence, and to trauma.
On average, about 35% or more of the total refugee population in Jordan are female-headed households. Because we've got a large portion of refugees that are living outside of the camp, that means that refugees basically have to provide entirely for themselves. And as a result, the burden of having to pay for rent, of having to pay for food, of having to pay for healthcare, of having to access education services means that there's an increased economic burden placed on the family, which ultimately may lead to either forced marriages or may also lead to survival sex. The impacts of violence on an individual are not just within the individual. These individuals are parts of families, they're parts of communities, they're parts of countries. And so it is essential in times of conflict as well as post-conflict to make sure that in that window of opportunity where individuals and societies can decide to rebuild back a different way, that the opportunity for women and girls is also there for them to be able to contribute actively as members of the community. And ECHO was the first donor to really invest in services catering to women and girls so early on in the emergency.
In Pakistan, what happened in the last 3 years is something which is not usual. Around 20 million people were affected by floods in 2010, and then if we top it up with 2011, around 5-6 million, and then 2012, again around 4-5 million. It's very easy to understand the scale of the problem. IRC and ECHO are trying to reach those most vulnerable families who are not having any sort of option to get enough food on the table for them and their family members in order to help them to pass through these difficult post-emergency or post-disaster periods.
In 2010 floods, an area equal to the size of the UK was underwater for consecutive 2 weeks, 3 weeks times. So when those people returned back after the floods, they had no food available to eat. They didn't have any drinking water, no fodder available for those who had their livestock, majority of which were dead. But those which were alive, no fodder available. They didn't have fertilizers or seeds to start their agriculture again. I have seen partnership with ECHO started health interventions, providing basic health care to women and children. After this first phase of emergency, we entered into the early recovery and we helped those returnees in establishing their lives through cash assistance programming. There is a well-known, very old proverb in Pashto language, which means wherever you go at the end of the day, one day you come back to your soil, to the place where you originated from.